Welcome to MilSpouse Matters, the podcast dedicated to encouraging military spouses. I'm your host, Jen McDonald, and I was a military spouse for nearly 30 years until my husband's retirement. I'm now the mom of 4 young adults, including 1 active duty son. I also wrote the book, You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse. Through my experiences, I came to believe that we're only stronger together. Whatever life is throwing your way as a military spouse, let's talk about it. So hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode. Today, I am super excited to be talking to Wendy Hively all about starting a business, finding that work-life balance, and some of the story behind her successful company, Charliemadison Originals. Wendy is a retired Navy spouse, a mother of 2 grown daughters, a full-time scientist, and the owner and founder of Charliemadison Originals, an online shop named after her daughters that helps military families tell their unique stories through everyday jewelry that honors each season and transition of military life. She currently lives in Maryland and is proud to honor the 3 generations of her family who served in the military by giving back 5% of your purchase to organizations that support military service members and their families. You can connect with Wendy and Charliemadison Originals at charliemadisonoriginals.com and on Instagram and Facebook as at Charliemadison Originals. And we'll link to all of that in the show notes. And make sure to keep listening so you can hear about the awesome giveaway Wendy is so generously providing. So welcome, Wendy. I'm so glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you too.
Yes. After some months of trying to connect,
yes.
We finally made it happen, right?
Yes, we did.
Well, I know you have a lot of amazing things to share about starting a business, work and home life balance, all those things. But first, if you would tell listeners a little bit about your background as a military spouse and family, that would be great.
Yeah, so we are a retired Navy family. My husband retired. We were just thinking the other day, it's getting close to 20 years now that he retired.
Really?
And, time flies. It sure does. So we retired and moved back around the DC area where we live now. And, we have 2 daughters, Charlotte and Madison. No secret there. You combine their names and you get Charliemadison. So that's where the name comes from. They are 19 and 25. And my daughter Madison actually works with me in the company. She is our marketing director.
Awesome.
We live in Maryland and I work full time as a scientist for the Food and Drug Administration. And then the business is my side hustle. And has been for, over 10 years now. So,
wow.
They always staying busy, but, we were fortunate in the military. Well, I don't know if fortunate, but it's interesting. I talk to people and I always feel, because we didn't have the typical, deployment move every 3 years, 6 deployments and all that we're not a typical military family, but I've come to realize that there's no such thing as a typical military family. So we were stationed here in the DC area for much of my husband's career. But we were fortunate to live in, Okinawa, Japan for 3 years, which after 20 years away, I still miss living there every day.
I hear that from a lot of people that they loved it there. That's one place I never visited, but my husband did. And then lots of friends did, and they unanimously just loved it there.
Yes. There was something magical about it. I just loved it. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I can't believe you guys have been retired for 20 years. That doesn't seem possible. You look like you're about 40. So how does that, how does that jive?
I assure you, I just look a little bit younger than I really am.
Well, as far as military life goes, and I don't know how you do it all being a full-time scientist. We're going to get to that, how you make that work with also running a company that you own. But first, far as moving goes, how did military life affect your career? You did say you stayed kind of in the same place, but were there any stresses or issues and then the moving overseas and back that forced you to make changes that maybe you wouldn't have in your career?
Yeah, definitely. So, because I have been incredibly fortunate to work in the career field that I trained for all of my career. So before we went overseas, I was working at the National Institutes of Health here in Maryland doing cancer research. And we found out we were transferring to Okinawa. And it turned out it worked out because the lab that I worked in was moving to New York City. So there was a kind of a natural transition there. But I had always worked for the federal government since I graduated from college. So when we went to Okinawa, I took extended leave without pay, is what they call it in the federal government. We went to Okinawa, and I looked for a job as soon as we got to Okinawa. I am sure many of your listeners can relate to this. We couldn't afford to just live on my husband's salary. He was enlisted, and we just had too many expenses. So I had to work, and I wanted to work. So I looked for a job. You can imagine jobs in the scientific fields are not so plentiful in Okinawa, Japan. But when we moved there, we were staying in temporary lodging for like 3 months, and I decided to write for a local newspaper. And I went around and toured. My daughter and I toured different sites, and I wrote articles for them, and I got paid just a little bit of money. Just making it work when you can. But I was lucky to find a job it was sort of science, but engineering. So it's a STEM. But I worked for the Air Force at Kadena Air Base in Okinawa for the environmental engineering flight for the 3 years that we were there. So I was super lucky to get that job, and it was really interesting. But it took me a few months to find it. And then when we came back to the States again, I took leave without pay and had to draw unemployment for a number of months, like 6 months before I finally found the job that I currently have with the Food and Drug Administration. But I hear from so many spouses the struggles with, especially those of us who are trained like in STEM fields. It's hard to find jobs, but to have to give up your job to move with your spouse is a really big sore spot, I think, within the military community. Which is why I think so many spouses turn to entrepreneurship. So it makes it easy. It makes it portable. Yeah. So I can definitely relate to the stories of either losing or having to give up a job that you love and that's in your career field. It's a real struggle.
Yeah. And do you have credentials that you had to transfer, like, with licensing, or were you okay to work anywhere?
No, I don't have any like technical licenses. No, I just have a strict biology degree. So it allowed me to really just move to another job.
That's good.
So there's another, thank goodness. Cause I know that's another headache to have to get those transferred.
Well, and that Military Spouse Licensing Act seems to have really alleviated a lot of that. Other than, I think lawyers, that doesn't work for them because every state's laws are so different. So the states administrate that. That's a whole side thing. But I remember back in the day, because I was a registered nurse, just moving from New Mexico to Ohio, I had to wait quite a while. I had to wait for each state board to talk to each other and finally say, yes, I could work. And then, some folks would work as nurses' aides until that would come through. And I think that has gotten a lot better because that's a long time ago. But I remember that feeling of just being frustrated. Like I want to work. I don't have 6 months. My husband was enlisted too. I needed to work. But,
yes, most definitely. And I hope that's improved in the past number of years, whatever, because having to take that cut in your pay creates a hardship for families.
Yeah. Or a hiatus that you didn't intend to.
Yep, for sure.
Not everybody's set up for that. Well, did you feel like you had to reinvent yourself in any ways? I love how you had your little budding freelance career that you hadn't planned on in Okinawa. I mean, that's a big pivot. That's something different. But are there other ways that happened for you that you didn't expect?
Well, I think it did happen when I started the business, but really a fun fact here, I started my business after my husband retired. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that because I started on Etsy, actually. Everybody talks about Etsy. And I did start long before Charliemadison Originals was a thing. I started on Etsy. So I I've always been creative, so I don't really know if it's about reinventing myself so much as it is sort of taking advantage of the different passions and the different hobbies and turning them into something that I really liked. So no grass grows beneath my feet because I don't sit still for very long. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Charliemadison and talk about the story of how you came to start that. Where were you guys living when you did that? Was it there in Maryland or overseas? You said it was after he retired.
Yeah, it was here in Maryland. I think I started with the jewelry making before that. I started with a company now that I'm not going to say their name. They're a very well known company, but they started out as a jewelry making party company. So you have like a Tupperware party, but you would get together and make jewelry with your friends. So I started, and that's really where I got into all this. And then I realized, I could just make my own stuff and sell it, which led me to Etsy. And I did that for a number of years. But now we're approaching about, I think it's 8 years that we've been on our own site at charliemadisonoriginals.com. So, that's really where the pivot came when we went to our own website, and really started catering more, if you will, to the military community, because it didn't start out that way.
I was going to say, did you ever intend for it to be that? It was more just making jewelry and.
It was really just to jewelry and the listeners who are in business or wanting to start a business, we always want to go broad. Like, we really want to sell to everybody. We really want everybody to buy our stuff. But the bottom line is, if you're trying to sell to everybody, you're selling to nobody. So you have to really find you have to find your niche and figure out what it is that you want to be known for. And just being part of a military family, and my extended family has 3 generations and 4 service branches in it. And so that really led me to choosing to focus on the military community and really doubling down on that, because I guess I just didn't want to commit to it. I felt that it was just going to be too small. But now that I'm in it, I realize how big it is and how many, how many people there are.
Well, and even veterans, I hear from people that are family members or veterans or retired spouses, and they're sharing it with other people, the podcast or my book or whatever. And in the same kind of thing, I was like, maybe I'll just do like a podcast, like about just life. Like you said, you're not going to find any listeners because it's just so vague. And really, you have to find your passion and speak to an audience that really wants to hear what you've got, and you've got that experience.
Yes. So it's really the same thing. I mean, podcast jewelry, you don't think that it has anything in common, but that is the truth. I mean, you're speaking to the people that really believe in what you're doing. And I think that's what's the most important thing.
Well, as far as starting a business, so maybe as far as you were starting with Etsy, maybe in your mind, did you think I'm going to have a whole business one day, or was it more like a side thing? And you even mentioned it's your side hustle, which cracks me up because I think it's like so well known. And, did you ever have the thought that this was going to be a business, and maybe the hurdles that you were going to face, and share some of those with somebody else that might be thinking of starting a business?
So I really did intend to eventually quit my full-time job as a scientist to do the business full-time. And it's taken a long time, but I can tell you, that's a wonderful compliment about our company being so well known. And yes, we're getting well known. How about that? It's not, and our website makes us look like we're making millions of dollars every year, but I assure you that we are not. And so it does take time to get well known and to get your name out there. But, life changes and things happen. And as we're going on 8 years of doing this on our own website, and the time between now and when we can fully retire shortens, I realize that unless we get discovered and have to make tens of thousands of bracelets in, 2 months, I don't think that I'm going to be replacing my full-time salary with the business.
Oh, don't
Yeah.
put that out there. You never know what can happen.
Well, maybe if I do put it out there, it will.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is that still a goal? Would you still like to do that?
I don't know. I mean, if it happened naturally, I'm not pursuing it as a goal because I know if anybody out there who's also a federal government employee, you know how good the retirement is. So you kind of have to stick with it to get it. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
So
right.
I've been doing it for 30 years with the federal government, just about, but I'm too young to retire. And isn't that sad? It's sad. It's so sad.
Well, I just think it's so interesting because, I see these correlations where I'm like, I didn't think that I would see them because I work for a company and then I do my podcast and writing on the side. And I was really motivated to try to kind of build up the side thing. I've let some of that go this past year and find a renewed focus and just enthusiasm for it. And I think that I don't know if that's the case for you. Whereas if you can stick to your first vision, that helps you keep going, because being an entrepreneur, being somebody that's doing something on your own, that side hustle, it is exhausting. So if you can kind of focus on why you started in the first place and get back to those basics.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because we talked a little bit before the podcast recording about going through those times. I mean, entrepreneurship is hard. It is really hard. It's the truth. It's really hard. And so you have to, there are days that I get up and I say, how much longer do I want to do this? How much longer can I really physically do this? And then on the days that you sometimes have to give yourself a break and you just don't think about it, but then you do have to come back. So what was my original vision? What am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? And so I always come back to, the community. So really there's three reasons behind our mission of giving back to the military community. And one is through our 5% annual donation to military 501c3 nonprofit organization. So that's one. And the second is through the jewelry, by creating this jewelry with messages that help military families get through these difficult seasons and stages of military life. And then the third is that we just love to shine a light on what other military spouses are doing. And we do that through our blog posts and through collaborations. And it's because military spouses often feel like they're just stuck in the shadows, that they've had to give up so much to be with their spouse, that the one that they love. But so many of them are doing such great things for the community, giving back and really pouring their hearts into it. And so anytime we can use our platform to shine the light on somebody else, it means a lot. So with those three things, we're coming back to, how are we affecting the community? And it's doing a lot of good. And so I have to remind myself, that's the reason that you keep going. That's the reason you continue to do this every day.
Yeah. And I think as long as you're hearing from people that it's making a difference, then you know you're on the right path. And I know I purchased a bracelet and a necklace for my daughter-in-law during my son's last deployment and sent them to her as a surprise. And, I got this note from her with the screen, she'd taken a photo of it. And she's like, "Are you kidding me? What are you doing?" Made me cry. It was like so encouraging. And I think your jewelry is beautiful. It's meaningful. And if you listeners have not checked it out, absolutely make sure and take a look, because I think it's a great gift. It's a great thing for like squadrons or for going away when you're saying goodbye to somebody, or even a welcome, or just to help somebody get through some tough days like a deployment. It is really special and meaningful because they always have a little message on it. And I love it.
Yeah. And it's never been about the jewelry. I mean, yes, we make jewelry, but that's really the vehicle for the message in our case. I mean, everybody has different things. You can buy jewelry anywhere, anywhere you can buy it, you can make it, but it's the meaning behind it. It's the encouraging message. And somebody said to me the other day, and we've said this all along, it's a tangible reminder on your wrist that you carry with you that kind of brings you back to the present moment. And somebody even said that to me the other day. I wear them and I look at them every day and I'm just reminded. And it was just like, yes, that's it. That's what we keep trying to tell people. And the fact that now people are saying it back to us, it's like your kids. You don't think your kids are listening to you. And then all of a sudden they,
you're like, yes, that's the message.
Yes.
I love that. I still don't get how you do it all working full time as a scientist, which to me sounds like that would be enough on its own. So how in the world do you do this? Do you like start working at 5 o'clock in the morning and then, or do you keep regular hours, or how does your day look, I guess?
Well, yeah, if I probably can't even tell you how I do it either, but, I am highly motivated, and ambitious. So, that is number one. Number two, my kids are grown, which makes things a lot easier. The third, yes, my days are busy. I get up at 5:30, and I work usually 6 to 2:30 at my day job, and then do the business. And I have my daughter Madison, who helps with lots of things to keep the business going. But we also, because of COVID, we were working at home full time, which allows an hour on each end of the day that you don't have to commute to work. So that helps.
That has to help a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're back to the office now a couple times, like once a week. But it's okay. It's I think if you're first starting out your business and you're trying to do all the things, it's a little bit harder than when you have an established business and you have people that can help do the other things that you don't love to do and that just help keep the regular day-to-day stuff going.
Well, and did you hit a point where you realized you needed help and farmed some things out? Because like you said, initially you do all the things on your own. And I do think that's the most exhausting part of it.
And there's still lots of things that I do that I really don't, that I wish I didn't have to do. But I think as a entrepreneur, you do eventually, as you're in it longer, you have to start farming out the things, Yeah. And for me, the first thing to go was accounting, because holy smoke, that causes me so much anxiety.
Really?
And you would think it wouldn't. You would think it wouldn't. I think it's because it has to do with money. I have some sort of mental block with money, but yeah, farming out the tasks that are easy. And as you grow, you think about, what is my time worth? If you consider paying yourself a certain amount of money an hour, can somebody else do it cheaper and just as effective? Yes. Yeah.
Or better.
And yes. Or better. Yes. Sometimes better, for sure. For sure.
Or faster. For me, it was my podcast. I could edit it myself, and I still do sometimes, but I have an amazing editor. She's going to be listening to this, and she does it so much more quickly. And it's just like, even if you can do it, should you be doing it? If you can free up that time, you have to look at it that way, I think.
The thing is, I am a very type A personality. So I wanted, my motto has always been, well, I can do it quicker and better. So why should I let somebody else do it? And then I don't have to explain it. So I've had to grow out of that mindset, and pass things along to my daughter. And, a while back, she came to me and she said, Mom, and actually we talked to our PR person too. And she said, Mom, we have to be on TikTok. I said, I hate TikTok. I am not doing TikTok. And she goes, I'll do it. And I said, okay. So she just tells me we need to film these videos, and she tells me what I need to talk about, and we film them, and she can edit them, and she puts them Instagram and TikTok. Yeah. She does them, and she's brilliant. People are like, you have great videos. Yes, because she's doing them and I don't have to do a thing. Yeah. And so I think that's know what you're really good at and let somebody else do the rest.
Yes. Maybe raise your future employees is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. If you're that lucky. Yes.
If you have an 8-year-old, hang in there. In 10 years, they'll be so helpful.
Except that my other one doesn't want to. She always says she wants to help. And I'm like, okay, you can help string some bracelets or do this. And 3 days later, I'm still waiting for it to happen. So.
It just depends. My youngest daughter has been helping me with some VA type stuff because I can show her how to do it, show her exactly what I want. And I am a little type A So, I want it done this certain way.
Exactly. But why not? Yeah. Yeah. And you're training them to go out there, and you're giving them a little bit of a leg up anyway, because you're teaching them something else. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how do you find time to do it all? Do you have are you really organized in your home, or as far as your schedule goes, do you kind of have the same schedule every day? Because I'm just thinking like exercise and anything extracurricular that you want to do as far as fun stuff. If you're working, I don't even know how many hours a day you're working, but if you're, working full time and then turning around and working for your own company, how do you build in that time?
It is hard, and it's taken me a lot of years to figure out what's important, and that I shouldn't be killing myself, because at the end of the day, when you die, nobody cares that you worked. I kept saying, all I do is work all the time. And then I realized, but nobody cares. Nobody cares that you're working all the time. So why work all the time? So I do pretty much have the same schedule every day during the week. And, as far as is my house organized? No.
Something has to give, huh?
Something has to give. It's not messy. It's not dirty. It's just not always dusted. But my husband cleans bathrooms. And so I don't have
wonderful.
I know. Yeah. So that's a good thing. But I do have a daily schedule. I don't work. Like, I break for dinner. We make dinner. We watch something on TV, and then I read before bed. And I used to work a lot on the weekends all the time. And now I do occasionally, if we have a big project or something that just needs to get out. But I try not to. I really try not to on the weekends, because nobody cares that you're working that hard. And realized by working all the time on the weekends that I was really just harming myself and my relationships with my family, that I just couldn't keep up. You can't keep up that pace. Something has to give, and it's either figuring it out before you get sick or hurt yourself, or then you're just going to be laying around trying to recover from being sick or hurt. So, yeah.
And I think that's such a risk for entrepreneurs. And that's very good advice. I think, especially younger ones. And I've done this working through dinner, working until bedtime, just trying to finish things, and working on the weekends, and to the point. Well, and my issue was I started doing all this before my husband retired. And so he was gone a lot. And I had kids at home still, who were homeschooling, by the way. And so I would,
oh my gosh,
I had teenagers I was homeschooling. So then we would finish, and they were very independent and were involved in all this stuff. But sometimes I couldn't start working till like 1 or 3 in the afternoon. Well, that was fine back then, because then I would literally work till 10 or 11 at night.
Yeah.
Well, once my husband retired and was around all the time, that was just that's not the way I wanted to live. And he really didn't appreciate that.
Yeah.
Or me working every holiday and weekend, if they were off doing whatever. And I had to totally just I had to let some things go. But it was a hard lesson to learn, because you see, especially on social media, this hustle and grind, and, you've got to be a boss babe and just really work, work, work. So hearing that somebody shuts their laptop and eats dinner, reads at night, that is a very healthy, balanced view. And I think it's something I hope, if listeners are looking to start a business or entrepreneurs, that you'll take that lesson and not have to learn that yourself the hard way.
Yeah, I did learn the hard way, and it took me a long time to learn it as well. But I think it's important to pass along, because this message about working, like you said, being a boss babe, doing all the things, it's counterintuitive to the other message of take care of yourself first. And, if you're sick, everybody else is going to be sick. Everybody, you won't be able to take care of anybody. And so you have to prioritize. We all have the same amount of time every day. That equalizes us, right? We all have the same amount of time. And so you can't do everything, but instead of saying, I don't have time for something, it's not that you don't have time for it. It's just that it's not a priority. So you have to decide what your priorities are, and not wait for the future to be happy. Like, in the future, when our kids are grown, then I'll have time to read, or I'll have time to whatever it is, insert X, whatever you like to do. But the happiness is in the present. And if you wait till then, something else is not going to make you happy. It's always about your mindset. And so finding something, it's just one little thing that you love to do every day and making time for it, will really help you feel like you're not just being sucked up by every little bit of entrepreneurship and family time that you've got. So.
And if you're a military spouse, you add in the pressures of military life. If you're solo parenting, or you just moved or are about to move in the middle of a move. And I see spouses, it's interesting at this age to kind of observe with a little bit of hindsight, and you can see it play out. We're like, okay, they're really tired, and then they kind of just fade away. Like they don't ever come back because they were trying to go 100% with everything. And anything less than that is a failure. And I'm talking business stuff here.
Yeah.
And you can just see the signs of it. And it's like, it's okay to take a break. And we were, like Wendy said, we were talking before this. And if you're a listener, a longtime listener, I took quite a long break over the winter months because I just needed to step back because of some family things going on. And I did. I stepped away for 3 months, and that is counter everything you're told in the podcasting world. They tell you your audience won't be there anymore. And I thought, well, if they're not, then that's my sign, to be done. But here we are, and everybody survived, and it's okay to just step back sometimes. And I think it's just giving younger spouses, especially really business oriented spouses, that permission that it is okay to not do everything and take a step back and rest and take days off. It's so, so important.
Yeah, it is. And I love that you said that because, going. It's what we're always like, who can be the busy? Like, who is the busiest?
Right.
And it's better if you allow yourself a break and really think about, like, if I'm just going to quit and I want to throw in the towel, I'm not going to do this business anymore. But you got to give yourself a little bit of time to think. So if it takes you a day, a week, a month, instead of just quitting and regretting the decision, really take the time, because sometimes it's just a matter of, like you said, giving yourself a break. You did that, and you found the passion again. You were able to come back and are doing love and helping other people as well. And so I think it's just important to allow yourself that space and the grace to really think about what you want to do and not just make snap decisions about the important things. Yeah.
So if anybody's listening, this is your sign.
That's right.
You're struggling with that. This is your sign to take a break and rest. You have permission. You have permission to rest and read a book.
That's
and
right.
Go to the beach.
For sure.
Yes. And before we get too much farther, I wanted to mention that Wendy is generously offering a piece of jewelry for giveaway. We are not decided yet on what that's going to be, but if you are interested in that, come to the MilSpouse Matters Instagram. We'll give you all the details on that. So thank you, Wendy, for offering that. That's so sweet.
Oh, absolutely. Love to just share a little of the Charliemadison love around. So,
yes. Well, I feel like we've talked a lot about, helping younger spouses, but if there is any advice you could give a younger spouse that's looking to entrepreneurship or starting their own business, or even what you would tell your younger self now, what advice would you give?
I love that question. And I've thought about it. I do remember when I first started out, and I think it's so important there's so much to learn, and there are a lot of places to get information. A lot of it is free on the internet, and there are people who offer training and programs that cost little to a very lot of money. I've done all of it. I've paid a lot of money for all of it. And I think it is important to carefully pick and choose where you get your information. However, keep in mind that you can't just keep learning and learning. You have to implement. So it's okay to keep taking classes and to keep learning, but you do have to stop and you have to do what you've learned, or else you won't ever get anywhere. So, I think I was always like, well, I'm not ready. I need to learn this instead. So I would go learn something else, and I'm still ready. So I spend my time, quote unquote, learning and thinking that that's the important thing, when really you figure things out as you go along, as you do them. It's like writing, and you're an author, so you know this. how many drafts does it take to get to the final? The first one is a bunch of crap, right? It's just crap. You get it on the page. And that's the same with business. You try and you pivot. You try. And if something doesn't work, you just pivot. It's not the end of the world. And I think I was too attached when I was younger, too attached to certain ideas that I had. Like, this is such a great idea and it didn't work. It flopped. But instead of just getting stuck on it, I've learned to let it go and try something else. And I think that's, learn and try. And I think that's really the key, because entrepreneurship is a long game. It's not for the faint of heart. And it's really the most successful are the ones who persevere, who just really have the grit to stick it in there and stay with it.
Were you the one that said that? I think I was talking to you before and you said, not that I'm the best at it. I was just stuck in there. And I don't remember if that was you or somebody else.
I don't know if it was me, but I love that. No, I'm not the best at it. There's a lot of things we've done that have just tanked or things we've designed and I've loved them and our customers didn't like them. And it's like, well, don't get upset about it. It's just, it has nothing to do with you. Just move along, and just try.
And it's hard not to take it personally when you are the one that designed it, when you were the one that created whatever it is you're putting out there. You do have to distance yourself a little bit from it when somebody tells you your baby's ugly. You have to step back.
Yeah. But you know what? That's the creative life. And that comes with anything, no matter what you're creating or writing or producing, it's not for everyone. Back to the finding your niche and finding the people who love what you love and believe in what you do. Those are the ones you're really talking to. Forget about the rest of them. Just stick with talking to the ones that are there for you.
And I think too, aligning with other people that are sort of in your same space. I love the idea that we can there's room for everybody. You can lift each other up. You don't have to be in competition. Even with people that would probably be considered your competition, you can support each other. It's so important to have that community and bounce ideas off each other and have that space to do that and trial and error, like you said. But I think one of the points you made as far as looking at classes or training or whatever, you can do that and just get stuck and never make a move.
Yeah.
And then also being careful who you're taking it from, because there's a lot of courses out there that are, I don't want to say predatory, but they're there to make money. And so take a look really hard at it, find out from other people that you respect what they think of it. There was something I was looking at business wise and it was so expensive. It was like half my yearly salary. Like it was for a 3-month thing. And I was like, oh, no, thank you. And I started getting notes from this organization saying, well, you must not really care about it or you'd make the investment. Don't you understand and I was like, no. Does that actually work on anybody? Because to me, that was such a turnoff.
That's shocking to me that people do that, but they do. And so that's not who you want to learn from.
Exactly. And I think for me, and I don't know if you found this to be true, you can look at all these courses and it was like writing courses about writing or blogging courses about blogging, and they're making money, but it doesn't translate into what I was doing because I was trying to actually create content, not just, does that make sense? Or it's like all they're talking about is like business practices or whatever. And some of them have great input, but that's their business model, is to make money off of telling you about business.
Exactly. I know.
It's just this revolving thing. You're like,
it's crazy. It's crazy. I'm glad that you brought up community too, because that is a very large piece of successful entrepreneurship. And I think the military spouse community is so great. I have met the most incredible women through other connections over the years. And there's a lot of great organizations. AMC is one of them.
I was going to ask if you had anything specific. Yeah.
Yeah. AMC is one of them. Lots of great resources specifically for military spouse entrepreneurs. There's also the Military Spouse Chamber of Commerce, and they have a program where you can be certified as a military spouse owned business. And we've gone through the process. It's not difficult. But there's just so much out there. I did this program too through American Corporate Partners. And as a military spouse, you can apply to them, to get a mentor for an entire year. And whether you're trying to get a corporate job or a job, I don't know, like a STEM job, even, starting a business, you can apply through the program and be paired with somebody who has done it, which is what I did. I was a mentor to a gal who was an artist and wanted to really get her artwork out there and sell it. And I mentored her for an entire year. And she is now, I'm going to tear up just saying it, but she is, she's had her own art shows and I've been to, and she's just doing incredible. And so it didn't cost anything for her to do that. So there's just a lot of stuff that military spouses have access to now.
What was the last program you mentioned? What was that called?
It's ACP. It's American Corporate Partners.
Okay.
I can even, off the top of my head, I know there's Bunker Labs and there's just really a lot of options out there and they're growing every day. Yeah.
So you have found support through certain programs, and then like informally, have you found other business owners that you have connected with and supported each other as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we do collaborations with military spouses to create bracelets that go along with organizational missions, with book publications, with all kinds of stuff. But just even as simple as shout outs on social media, giveaways together. They're just so many. And I know when I first started out, because, I was, kind of linked up with our Riveter. They sell some of our products. And their founders, Lisa Bradley and Cameron Cruz, were incredibly kind and helpful and offering some business advice. So I think it's the seeking out people who are willing to share what they know. And I always say that if somebody has a question, I feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to help out. I mean, I love to offer and help new entrepreneurs and people who just have questions and get stuck on something. So,
oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And it's been so long since I'm doing this. I keep, half considering doing some sort of like coaching for
you should.
I know.
Yes, because I think you'd be a good voice of reason. I think I vote yes. Give you one more thing to do.
Keep trying to put these things into the universe. Maybe eventually it will happen. I don't know.
Well, and I think that's good advice for a young entrepreneur business owner. Look at who is doing what you're wanting, like maybe your goal is or where you'd like to be, and just ask the question. I've met so many wonderful people that way. Just sent them a note and just, it's like we have some synergy. We're kind of doing the same sort of thing. We have the same audience. Would you like to talk? And yeah, it's great. It's such a support.
I think people get afraid to like, oh, they're too well known. I can't email them. I even get like that. Like, oh, I don't know if I really want to email them, but what's the worst they can say is no. And I tell people, I'm just like you. I mean, I'm sitting in my bedroom, I'm going to go down and cook, chicken stir fry for dinner. I'm just a regular like science geek that just happens to also be an entrepreneur. There's nothing special about me. It's just that I've done it and I've kept with it long enough to have some success with it. And it's just being humble. I'm not about the flashiness. And I think we just need to all boost each other up. I really think that's the key, because we all need it. I mean, military families have to sacrifice so much, so we might as well cheer each other on.
Yes. Well, I think that is the perfect message. And I think it's a great note to end on. So everybody
Sounds
just
great.
remember to come to Instagram and look for that giveaway. And I want to remind you where to find Wendy. Just look for her at charliemadisonoriginals.com and on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And we'll link to all the places. Wendy, was there anything else you wanted to add before we close?
No, I just want to thank you for having me. It was a really fun conversation, and I'm glad. I hope somebody can take away at least one thing from today's conversation.
Well, I think it's a great encouragement. And I know people will take away more than one thing because I think it's a realistic look and remembering to take care of yourself, even in spite of those goals that you may have, how important it is to be balanced. And I think that is something, I think a lot of military spouses are type A. I'm not sure if we did some sort of poll. I feel like a lot of us.
I think so. I think you're right.
Fall into that. Well, thank you again, Wendy, for joining us today. And I would love to have you back in the future. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
And hey, everybody, thank you so much for listening. And remember, you are brave, you are strong, and you have got this. And have a wonderful week. And I will talk to you next time. Thanks for listening to the MilSpouse Matters podcast. Connect with me at jen-mcdonald.com or on social media as @MilSpouseMatters. You can find even more military life support with my book, You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse, and my other podcast, The Christian MilSpouse. Love the show? Please subscribe and leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening, and then share it with someone else who could use it too. Until next time, have a great week.